3 months into the war with Iran, President Trump says he doesn't care if peace negotiations are over. The president made that comment to CNBC yesterday when asked about reports that Tehran would be suspending talks to end the war over Israel's invasion and bombardment of Lebanon. Trump said, quote, "I don't care if they're over, honestly. I really don't care. I couldn't care less. If they're over, they're over. If they're not, I think they took too much time." He went on to say, quote, "Frankly, I thought they started to get very boring. They were giving us what we needed, but I think they handled the negotiations poorly. It took too long." Later yesterday, President Trump posted on social media that he spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and indirectly with Hezbollah, and both sides agreed to dial back the fighting that threatened negotiations. Netanyahu, however, said in a statement that he told Trump Israel would strike targets in Beirut if Hezbollah's attacks continue, adding the Israeli military, quote, "will continue to operate as planned in southern Lebanon, where deadly strikes have continued even this morning." Hezbollah did not comment, but Lebanon's government, which does not control the group, said it received confirmation that Hezbollah had agreed to the U.S. proposal for a ceasefire. And then there's this. Axios has some new reporting on the call between President Trump and Netanyahu. The president, during that call, reportedly lashed out during an expletive-laden conversation, according to 2 U.S. officials and a third source briefed on the call. According to one U.S. official, Trump told Netanyahu he was effing crazy and that the prime minister would be in prison if it weren't for him, likely referring to his Israeli leader's years-long corruption trial against Netanyahu. The president added, quote, "Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this." That's a quote according to Axios. A second source briefed on the call said Trump was pissed and at one point yelled at Netanyahu, quote, "What the F are you doing?" One of the U.S. officials told Axios that Trump felt in recent days that Netanyahu was escalating in a disproportionate way. Look, this has long been a source of tension, what to do around Lebanon and the competing views between the Israelis and the U.S. Another U.S. official said Trump was also concerned by the fact that Israel had killed so many civilians in Lebanon and objected to the Israelis knocking down buildings to take out a single Hezbollah commander. That's the state of play as we bring in MS Now reporter covering national security and politics, Julia Jester. Julia, this is something on this show on Morning Joe, on our network, we've talked about the fact that Lebanon is going to be a sticking point, has been, and clearly is right in view right now as these negotiations are breaking down, which we'll come to in a moment. But you've been focused on the Lebanon issue and the ways that the Israeli perspective and the U.S. perspective are divergent on how long this campaign should continue. It's essential right now to understand it. So what have you learned in your reporting?
At the start of the war, I wrote about how the U.S. and Israel entered this joint operation together, but how they left was going to be a key question. We're seeing that play out right now because the U.S. goals for the war with Iran seem to diverge in some ways with Israel's, in particular with the Lebanon front. Now, this administration has repeatedly stressed that there are 2 separate negotiating tracks. There's the Iran portfolio, which Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and J.D. Vance, the vice president, have been leading. And then there's the Israel-Lebanon portfolio that has been under Secretary Rubio within the State Department. They have insisted these are 2 parallel tracks. Well, we look at this potential deal. We've heard that it's a deal. It's almost a deal. It's not quite a deal.
Now it's nothing.
Now it's nothing. But that was supposed to include an end to the fighting in Lebanon, which was interesting because these have been separate issues. And this week, today and tomorrow, you have the ambassadors coming back to the State Department for 2 intense days of diplomatic talks. And this is going to be a key issue that's now going to affect the broader Iran conversation. And the question is, can President Trump rein in Bibi Netanyahu? This is not the first time they've had a tense phone call, a tense exchange, but you have Netanyahu with his own political considerations. He has an election to face. He is insistent on handling this issue. And if you look at the president's readout of his call with Netanyahu saying that he spoke with the president, but our position has not changed, that really just does not indicate any sign of progress. And even if there is a ceasefire within a ceasefire, because keep in mind, we are still within a ceasefire, but in name only, essentially, that just maintains the status quo, which is not what the Lebanese people want. It is, quite frankly, not what we were hoping to get from these peace talks, a wider deal there. And so we'll see if the next 2 days bring forth any progress.
Yeah, and I think that is the open question, because you're right that they've been treated as separate and parallel, but clearly these deals intersect. And of course, we have to talk about the fact that even in the Iran-U.S. negotiations, there hasn't been a ton dealing with proxy groups that Iran supports, like Hezbollah. And so I think that's the ways that even if they wanted to say these are parallel but separate, they're actually not, because they're very much enmeshed with each other. And so that's the state of play around Lebanon if we want to continue separating them. But then when it comes to the Iran-U.S. deal, the idea that the president is now just coming out and telling our colleague at CNBC, Eamon Javers, I'm bored with these negotiations, they're taking too long. Diplomacy is notoriously slow. It's usually why it happens at the staff level behind closed doors before principal players are even brought in to effectively close the deal. But our colleague Jake Traylor had previously reported weeks ago that the president was getting bored with this conflict. What does it say that he's now saying it out loud? And what's the impact of that on negotiations? I get that the president always likes to reserve the right to walk away and that that's a tool in the arsenal of negotiating. But what is the impact, and is that the goal?
Well, anyone who knows Iran at all knows that they have this bizarre style of negotiating. It is tireless. It is relentless. It takes time. Iran's own foreign minister has said whoever gets tired and bored quickly is the one who's going to lose. And the fact that the president does appear to be getting bored in this process that is going to, as you noted, take time. The JCPOA, which the president ripped up, wanted to get out of, wanted to get a better deal, that took years to pull together. And to your point, at this very staff granular level. And it really wasn't until the war started that they really brought in some of these experts in these conversations. You go back to the Islamabad talks that J.D. Vance himself attended. And so the fact that the president is kind of ready to walk away, it begs the question, what happens with this military buildup in and around Iran? What happens to the actual conflict happening? Again, we are technically in a ceasefire, but in name only. And if you call this situation a quagmire, the administration gets very upset. But that appears to be the situation that we are in if there is no progress on the diplomatic front. It doesn't matter how powerful and successful our military is. You cannot bomb your way out of this.
Yeah, especially when you see the American public in poll after poll showing that they don't have patience or desire to continue this war and to watch it continue to unfold in front of them, especially not when they're on the receiving end of higher gas prices and other things. It also comes as Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to go back to Capitol Hill today for back-to-back congressional hearings. It's his first since the Iran war began back in February. Rubio will appear before the Senate Foreign Relations and House Foreign Affairs committees to make the State Department's annual budget request. But the focus is expected to shift to these unsteady ceasefires and between the U.S. and Iran. Rubio has defended President Trump's decision to launch the conflict in the first place, despite promises to not engage in so-called forever wars. That is, of course, the political backdrop to this as well. Rubio, adept in front of his former colleagues in Congress. But what do you imagine his message is going to be today? He has been one of the people who has been, I would say, a little bit more optimistic about the state of these talks, saying that they were at one point a few weeks ago just talking over which were the right words to use. Of course, word choice matters so much in these kinds of memos of understanding. But is that, do you imagine the optimism that he brings to Capitol Hill?
His optimism, but also has, I think, a bit more realism as well. You look at what the president was saying over Memorial Day weekend, that there's an imminent deal and we're going to announce a deal. And Rubio's across the world saying, actually, it's probably going to take some time. The negotiations, you have the Iranian leadership buried underground, takes a while to get back and forth. So he's not afraid to level set, but he also, to your point, has a sense of optimism and does prefer diplomacy. And so I'm sure he will get peppered with question about, is there a deal on the table? What are the details of the deal? And my key question is, what is the U.S. getting out of a potential deal with Iran that it did not have before this war started? He cannot just simply say the Strait of Hormuz will be reopened, because that's where we were a few months ago. And so he's going to get questioned about Iran, about Israel's actions in Lebanon in particular. You have Ranking Member Shaheen on Foreign Relations coming out with a statement just the other day expressing deep concern with Netanyahu's aggressive push in Lebanon, the concerns about civilian loss of life in and around Beirut. So that will be a topic as well. And then looking at the globe more broadly, it's not just Iran that will be on the table for Rubio to answer for. You have the issue of China and Taiwan. Taiwan, and the president essentially using the arms sale to Taiwan as leverage, which is quite unprecedented. So I'm sure he'll be asked about that. You would be forgiven if you forgot there was a conflict with Russia and Ukraine still ongoing, because unfortunately that has kind of fallen in the backdrop of everything else going on. But that really has amped up in recent weeks, especially with regards to Ukraine's attacks on Russian energy infrastructure, which could have global implications. And then you also, of course, have Cuba, which is ramping up, and you see the presence of the U.S. military there. You have the Southcom commander visiting Cuba just recently, and so there's a whole plethora of issues to address. This is about the budget for next year, technically.
As I often say, timing really is everything on Capitol Hill, and the fact that we are doing budget season while all of these cabinet members are coming up. We've never seen more tension between Senate Republicans and the White House than we do right now. And all of these cabinet secretaries are going to be the ones who have to answer for that. And for the people who watch this show and Morning Joe and others so frequently, they've heard me say before that this foreign policy of this administration feels very much like it is fully from Rubio's playbook. For those of us who have watched him for a while, Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, those have all been top talk targets for Rubio, now being put into action.